Coming to you live from the basement of an abandoned training facility where we talk about fighting, training, and events. It's the Fight Mixer Show, where you can hear about all the local and world combat sports happenings. Get ready. It's time to gear up and square up because we're going live on the Fight Mixer Show.
What's going on?
I'll tell you. Thank you, Matt. Thank all you guys over at Fight Mixer. Let me tell you something. These guys put it together.
Fight Labs.
Fight Labs. Because of Fight Labs, I'm looking at the legend, Dan Freeman.
What's up?
Durango, who runs the Inoki Dojo. Josh Barnett. Boss Rutan. Joe Malenko. Guy Metzger. And Chris Lytle. And
holy shit. It's crazy, man. Fight Labs. Fight Labs. Where can we find you?
The Pancrase Summit. And you guys are exclusively live. Nobody else has got it but Fight Mixer. Check them out, fightmixer.com. Support the cause, support the fighters, support Fight Labs.
Fight Labs.
Thanks, Matt. Yes.
Where can we find Fight Labs? Tell us all about Fight Labs.
FightLabs.com. We sell directly to consumers, and you can find our products on Amazon.com.
You know what? Dan Freeman, if you ever read the book Inside the Lines, then you know who that guy is. Original Lions member, Dan Freeman. Get out of the way there.
Holy shit.
What's up, man? How we doing?
Lions Den, baby.
Where we at?
So, train with the Lions Den. You train with literally some of the best fighters in the world. Like, just tell us all about it.
Best MMA team ever, the Lions Den in the 90s, man. You just, anyone who's heard that name, the Lions Den, you knew what it was all about. Each guy was a whole nother level. It was, we're all alpha males. Ken was the guy. That was our leader. And we all just fell into place, and we trained hard. Everything we did was 100%. And the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So, and you look at everybody and what they've done. Ken, Frank, Guy Mesger, Trey Teligman, Pete Williams, Jerry Bolander. I mean, it's
Joe Dirt.
Joe Dirt. Yeah.
Joe Dirt.
I'm talking to a fucking legend right now. So I have a couple questions for you. And I can't believe you're here because I wasn't prepared for it, but I know who you are because I grew up watching the Lions Den. So for anybody that is not initiated, the Lions Den was the original dominant team. It was ran by Ken Shamrock, his adopted brother, Frank Shamrock. Yes. And you had some of the best talent in the world. Guy Mesner, who's here with you guys right now. So how did you guys all find each other? That's the question.
Who what?
How did you guys all find each other? Like how'd you find the Lions Den?
Ken had the I live in California. I'm in Modesto, and Ken was about a half an hour from there in Lodi, and he had already had some of the guys coming in from Texas and whatnot. And I just lived in Modesto. Ken started using me. I was I guess you could call it MMA back then. I had like 3 different styles under my belt, and Ken used me to train with him to get ready for like one of the events. He's getting Shamrock versus Chemo, and that was David versus Goliath. So I started training with him because I was about 270, 280 pounds and had a black belt in Kempo and some wrestling and some judo. So we just kind of emulated that, getting ready for that fight. And that's how I came in. But that's how I met the other guys. So we all just became a team, and it all worked out. It fell into place. And we were there to learn. We just wanted to go to that next level. So that had to happen through Ken and coming in from Japan where he was fighting with Pancrase, and then later on Pride and all that came from all that. But yeah, it was just it was a whole nother level. We trained hard. Our dieting, the training, it never ended. It was wasn't at the Lions Den training inside the the dojo, and training mixed martial arts. Then it went to the gym, lifting weights, and then going home and dieting and eating right. It was a high performance thing. We hit every angle, So,
and back in the day too, like with the Lions Den, you couldn't even just join that team. It's not like nowadays where you can walk into American Top Team. You had to be initiated.
Yeah.
You had to be the cream of the crop. You had to do a certain amount of push-ups, certain amount of sit-ups. You had to spar with everybody.
Yeah.
What was the initiation process like going into Lions Den?
You wouldn't even believe it, because it wasn't like there was even some Navy SEALs that didn't make the team, and you're thinking, well, what's that? So those guys aren't punks. So what the deal was like you said, you already knew from the get-go. They would tell you before the initiation's over and this tryout, you're going to do 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 setups, crunches, 1,000 burpees, and immediately that got in your head. Well, to graduate at the end of the day from that and pass the test, it was just to see if the person had no quit. So if they thought they still hadn't got to 1,000 of this or that, that wasn't really the case. I mean, most of the time you did do that amount, but it was just to show that you didn't quit. So the mindset had to be there of, man, I still got to do this. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. That was all ruled out. So that's what you had to do to be a Lions Den fighter and fight under, that title, the Lions Den and Ultimate Fighting that was going on. Because once you got in the ring, all these guys to get in the ring and fight, whatever you went through at the Lions Den was nothing. It was beyond what was going to go on. Ken didn't want you to think that something was going to happen in the ring against your opponent that wasn't already done in the dojo. So it had already been done. So any one of the fighters that got in and ready to fight, it was, you weren't worried about it. You'd already done this against. We're all different weights and sizes and talents and styles. So. Yeah, it was just a whole nother level, man. It was, I don't think you'll see that again with the team like that. I mean, not taking anything from the teams that are out there, American Top Team and all that. Great schools, but like you said, you can't just walk in and go, okay, here's my money and whatever. Like, no, you gotta try out,
The absolute elite of elite. And how'd you get started in mixed martial arts? Because obviously your background is vast, and especially in 3 different styles. And you helped Ken Shamrock, especially when he had that win over Kimmo. Which he's no slouch. He's a very scary.
No, he was big like me and limber and everything, can move, and that's a scary thing to put someone that size and together like that and has that speed, because that's when it's dangerous. But usually big guys and stuff with the muscle are just one dimension, and they just don't have the talent in these different areas. They're easily picked apart. But I got in. I just grew up. I was always lifting weights and stuff. The kid had a stepdad that was always, putting hands on me and beat me. A lot of fighters grew up like that. It was just a rough life and getting bullied and stuff. And so I just started, doing weights and going to karate. I'd spend every dime I had working and taking my karate classes and Kempo. And then over summer, I was still in school. I'd go to do the summer program and take some judo and some wrestling. I had an older brother, always 4 years older than me, always beating up on me. So I was always on the bottom, So it comes time to get in a fight or do something, and it's everything's already been done to you. You're not scared of anybody really. You're just kind of used to it. So that's how I got into it. And then when I met with Ken and the rest of the guys in the Lions Den, that was just Ken wound up choking me out. I didn't really know much about that. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna do this, and he was on my back. I'm gonna flip him. I'm gonna do that. That didn't happen. So time I woke up, and cleaned my shorts out, and it's very humbling. And here's Guy and Trey and all those guys looking down at me like, hey, are you all right? And I come to. I didn't even know what happened. So, that was a whole nother level of just man, I got to learn this stuff. Well, what is this? And it's grappling. Ken flies to Japan and, does this because there was no gi or anything. It was, no gi fighting. And, I didn't really know much about the whole Brazilian thing yet, and where grappling and jiu-jitsu originated from. So the genesis of it is Japan, and then it goes to Brazil, and they like to have a gi on. But so here's Ken doing these things to me, and these guys where they don't have a gi on, so you're not expecting all that stuff,
Yeah.
So that's how that started.
So following obviously with the Lions Den, what were your aspirations when you first entered that gym and training with some of the best talent in the world at the time? What was your aspirations, or where did you want to go with it?
Man, I liked doing both. So I'd be in the gym for like when I was a kid, 8th grade in high school. I'd be in the gym I started competing in bodybuilding. So I'd do a show, and then I'd get back into the gym. I'd want to get back into karate and doing karate tournaments. Me and Flex Wheeler, the other bodybuilder, we were doing these point karate champions, and we were the best in California. And then all of a sudden, this was my true love when this UFC hit. And there was only a few of the events that had came out already. I think we were on the 3rd or 4th one. And I'm like, man, I'm all over that. But now I'm already, doing the Mr. USA shows and all this stuff and professional bodybuilding. It's like I'm kind of sucked in already. I'm like, man, I want out of this. This is what I really want to do. So I was still doing both, and it was really tough. I was getting injured like every month, just tearing stuff. Yeah, it was brutal. But yeah, I just when the UFC came out, I think just so many people and look where we're at today with it. You can't turn on TV any time of the day or the week without seeing some MMA somewhere.
Right.
Whatever level, from the UFC to this or that, lower organizations. But whoever thought we would be here with all of that? So yeah. So
and if it wasn't for Lions Den, if it wasn't for like the fighters that put in the work and time like yourself, we wouldn't have a UFC. And we talked about this with Pancrase and like all these different promotions, that everything sort of like intermingles and like gets to the point that we're at today. Like some of the best talent in the world fought in Japan. Best talent in the world fought where nobody was watching. You guys in the Lions Den have wars in the gym that nobody will ever see. I'll never get to see. And, you guys are part of that creative crop, those pioneers that helped build the sport that it is today. So first off, thank you very much, and I really do appreciate for building the sport I love. And second off, did you ever think that the sport would be where it is today?
No, I mean, as a kid, I was getting in fights like every week. I did nothing else. There's no drugs, drinking, girls, all that. I was in a fight every week. That's what people don't understand. Every week I was in a fight. And Ken was growing up the same way like this. We're kind of out on the street and mischievous and this and that. So like you said, there's all this hidden talent out there that's just, it wasn't mainstream. It's not golf or football or baseball. Without me even knowing Ken or meeting him, I would have to say this. Without Ken Shamrock and Hoist Gracie and the UFC, those are the forefathers. Without them, we wouldn't be here. So yeah. Thank you for, Semaphore Entertainment Group, Art Davies, and Bob Meyerowitz for bringing the UFC and going out there with the dream. I mean, you see, they couldn't sustain it later on, and it needed to, to grow where it did. And Dana White coming in with the Fertitta brothers, and buying it. There's things that needed to happen to sustain it. So, yeah. But without those guys initially in the beginning, like I said, whether I know Ken or not, those are the forefathers. They did all the hard work and the work and brought this ground game that people are thinking. Now you have every guy that's, he could be under 6 foot or 5'6" or something, 130 pounds. Now you got his attention. He's like, man, I can fight someone bigger than me. I don't have to be bullied anymore. I don't have to get picked on anymore. I can do something about this. And,
So, and just for all of our viewers watching, UFC was started by like Bob Arum and a bunch of brilliant minds. And the original concept was, it was started by SEG, and it was, Hickson Gracie had not Hickson Gracie, which Gracie was it? But like one of the Gracies was involved with the initial process of starting the UFC. And UFC 1 was a big infomercial for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I don't know if you felt like that. I don't know if Ken felt like that after the fact or maybe in hindsight. But Ken Shamrock, it was Ken Shamrock and Hoist Gracie all the way. Those were the two talents in the tournament. Did Ken Shamrock feel like he was going to win the tournament, or did he? Because obviously he fought in Pancrase. He fought, he's a fighter through and through. Did he feel like it was straight towards being favored towards promoting Gracie and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, or what was his mind heading into the first UFC?
So it was so, because we were so young and everything, the pride and the ego was there. It was like watching an old Saturday morning kung fu theater film, because it was this style's better, this style's better. So that was still going on. So now you have two ground game guys saying, oh, my style's better, I'm going to prove it, So one guy has a gi on, which you're allowed to do back then, and you can wear shoes or gloves or anything you wanted. There really was no rules. And depending on which state we were in, they would maybe add a rule or take away some rules. But without we would come into the octagon together, and we'd be holding on each other's shoulders and raising a flag up and everything, representing So that's all you were focused on was your style, and you know, you really weren't open to a lot of other things. Like, this is what works, this is what's doing, and like, once again, the proof was in the pudding. We were showing both the Gracies and the Lions Den that this style was working, and that's what got the whole world's attention. So yeah, it was just a representation of and a pride of your school and your style.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to the new generation of fighters, especially the fighters that are coming up right now? Because you know you grew up at a different time where you guys were a part of the building blocks of the sport. Where, you know, in my opinion, Ken Shamrock's one of the most complete fighters in that generation.
Right.
Where he had very good stand up, he had very good grappling skills. He was a submission wrestler. You know, he could beat you any way. He was the world's most dangerous man, and the Lions Den was exactly that, a Lions Den, a crop of talent that in my eyes, especially as the casual MMA viewer as a kid, I saw you guys as unbeatable. I saw you guys as superhuman.
Absolutely.
But now
if it wasn't this thing, the time, these would still be the fighters. You know, we would have grown, you know, we could stay young forever. You just learn more styles and everything and practice that and make it work. But, you know, age just kind of, you start breaking down, and you know all the damage and you're doing to your body, so you can only sustain that for so long. But yeah, you said that, telling the fighters today what to do, just man, get into some wrestling or something, start learning one style, make that work. You know, you even see current fighters today, you know, they call them one-trick ponies. If that one trick they got is good, it's going to work for a while until they have to cross that path and make it work. But yeah, like I said, to give the fighters today, you know, to tell them something to motivate them and get them going. Like, yeah, just get into something. Most people want to get their kids into wrestling. You can't go wrong with that. And then go to the jiu-jitsu after that. But I would say this, the all-American wrestling or Greco-Roman wrestling, as Randy Couture made work. Just, yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's unstoppable, especially a kid in high school or something like that. He doesn't have to learn all those other things, you know.
Absolutely. And did you ever have like a dream opponent or somebody that you wanted to fight or somebody that you wanted to step in the ring with? Was there ever like that dream opponent, especially training with the Lions Den? Like, well, who was your dream opponent?
Man, I'll tell you who I didn't want to fight if I ever had to fight him. I was still under contract with bodybuilding and Weeder and stuff like that. It was Dan Severn. I was just worried about Dan Severn. Tank Abbott, I was like, he made me nervous walking around town at the events because he'd want to come start fights with you like we're in a bar or something. So it always made you nervous. But Dan Severn, he just had this balance to him, and he was 270, 280 pounds, you know, all natural, and it's just be a hard guy to fight, you know. And I was just like, I hope something never happens where I have to fight Dan Severn or whatever. That would be, you know, a bad matchup for me. That was for me though, you know.
Yeah.
Somebody else I didn't have an issue with. I'm like, oh man, I can handle all this. Yeah.
Did you ever meet? Because Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn had not only just the best MMA fights, but they also had the best pro wrestling matches too when they went to the WWE.
Right.
Did you ever meet Dan Severn and Tank Abbott? What was your perspective on them?
About those two fighting?
Correct. Or no, about both of them. Like, did you ever meet Tank Abbott? Did you ever meet Dan Severn? Like,
yeah, well, I'd be at all these events, and we'd fly and be there a week, sometimes 2 weeks early, and then Tank was, he was a complete, you know what, he was an ass. So he'd be drinking already, and that's what he would do when he'd fly out to the events. Like they'd call him 2 days before an event, say, hey, will you fight this and that? Yeah, and so he'd leave the bar and just fly out and be out there. But I think he was drunk most of the time. He'd be running around, he'd be trying to start fights with you like a bully. So you had to be, you know, aware of what's going on. So he made you like anxious and stressed out as you're just trying to focus on a professional event, if you will. Dan Severn was always professional. It was just more about like a pride thing, you know, I'm going to beat you, my style. And, you know, yeah, Tank was just like a street fighter. He's very talented. And I'll tell you this, a lot of people don't know this. Back in those days, the best jab in the UFC out of all those fights up until, you know, probably the early 2000s, Tank Abbott has the best jab that I've ever seen. He'd walk by his room and he'd throw that jab. Man, and that's how he knocked people out. He'd catch him with that jab first. It wasn't ever a haymaker right off the bat. He'd hit him with that jab, and that would knock him back. And then here comes the hammer after that. So we're all worried about him walking around something. He's always drunk, you know. He'd bring these other idiots with him, you know, and most of them knew how to fight, you know. But they were all street fighters, and Yeah, it was just a strange deal back then. You know, it wasn't like you would never come to an event and start fights. You know, but he did. He showed up every time, and he was looking to knock somebody's head off, make him do whatever he could do. You know, he was bullied.
Did you ever see that shit where he tried to lift that guy over the cage and like actually throw him over the cage?
Right. Yeah. I was there. He picked the guys like why are you doing that? So everything was about showing off and bullying and belittling people. So you had no respect for anybody. Well, we were all about respect. You know, we were almost militant pretty much. Everything was about respect. In the way we cleaned the dojo and the school and everything we did was about respect. And then here's this guy who has no respect. And then, you know, even Tito coming up, he was from the same area, Long Beach, you know, where Tank was. So he was kind of acting like that a little bit in the beginning. So that's what caused that big old thing with him and Ken. It was about respect. And here's Tito, you know, doing this and that, and flipping people off after he fight him, you know, and that just started a war right there, which made great TV and fights for, you know, the trilogy that they had, even though Ken was getting older at the time. So that sucked. But yeah, it was a respect thing, you know.
And especially from like the younger viewers, because I remember when Tito Ortiz fought Guy Mesner and flipped off Ken Shamrock, which Ken Shamrock, to me, like when he went to WWE, that's when I started watching WWE.
Right.
I was all about Ken Shamrock back in the day. When he wrestled for WrestleMania in 1998, and that was the first pro wrestling event I ever watched because Ken Shamrock was involved in, of course, Mike Tyson. But so when that all happened, were you involved with like the whole showdown between Tito Ortiz and Ken Shamrock? And because it was like such a contrast where we see this nowadays with Tito Ortiz, like his style where talking trash and everything like that. Everybody loves it. Everybody buys the pay-per-views of talking trash. But like I watch MMA with the respect, like Kazushi Sakuraba, Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock.
Absolutely.
These guys were my heroes. So like, what's your perspective on current day, modern day mixed martial arts about the trash talk and everything? When you fought and you trained with the Lions Den, where it's all about respect, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I grew up that way. Everything was about respect. So when we saw these people, like I said, acting like that and disrespect, it didn't go along with the whole MMA thing, you know. And there's always been respect in martial arts. That's why you put kids in it nowadays and in the sports. It's a respect. They learn to respect themselves, respect others. It's not to get in there and to use it to bully people. So when I saw that, Tank Abbott acting that way, and then Tito, you know, Ken was at my house. He was wrestling at the time. He was injured, but you never get any days off from the pro wrestling. He still just had to go out to the event, but he shot over and he's in a wheelchair or crutches and a cast. And that was when Guy Mesger fought Tito the second time, and you know, Tito won, and then he's, you know, flipping him off and doing this stuff. Then you saw Ken jump up on the edge and go, "Don't you ever disrespect," you know. So it was like this father figure thing come down, because Tito did actually eternally, you know, inside he respected Ken. He had pictures of him on his wall and growing up. So now here he's coming into his own. He doesn't really know how to deal with that. He probably didn't even want to act like that, but he had to make a name for himself. So, you know, it's just one of those things. But just to see disrespect like that, you see it nowadays. You see it. Everybody pretty much respects each other. It's not like the old days like that, where there were no rules. There is rules. You got to respect everything. It's you'll only see like Conor McGregor do it, but only so many people can act like that. But it's more of a marketing thing. Not everybody can get out there and, you know, Chael Sonnen works this good. That guy works, you know, with acting a certain way. But you saw what it's done to further their career. But not everybody can just get up there and start flipping people. You know, it's fake. So you don't see all that nowadays. Everybody has respect. If they are acting like that, is what I'm saying. It's just because they're trying to market themselves. It's like wrestling, like you said. You either have to be loved or hated. We all know that. You can't just be some mediocre pro wrestler. You either got to play the heel role or you got to, you know. And The Rock's done both. You know, you saw Rocky Maivia. You know, Dwayne Johnson. He did both. I was right there when Ken got into WWF. He was getting spit on. He was hated. He was with that Nation of Dominant, whatever they were. He was getting
corporation.
Yeah. He was getting spit on. I felt so bad for him. Next thing you know, he was a heel because of who he was hanging around with and who his group was. Later on, he came into his own and just started being the people's champion. He changed it on his own. You know, the people's champion. You know, laying the smackdown. Like, look at everybody loves The Rock. Look where he's at.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So So we're gonna move this along, and I really do appreciate your time. And obviously, you train with the Lions Den and being a part of the, a part of the pioneers, and a part of this panel. I really do appreciate your time. Anything you want to promote, anything you want to throw out there, please. The floor is yours.
And what? I'm sorry.
I said the floor is yours. If you want to promote anything, you want to talk about.
So the whole time.
No, we're talking about fighting.
Promote now?
Anyways, about 10, 11 years ago, I started a supplement line. Me and Ken were on the Ultimate Fighter. I was a second coach to him against Tito Ortiz, obviously. They were kind of keeping that drama alive and going. But Dana White had said to me while we were out there, and he said, why don't you start your own supplement line? Because there were some supplements they were using out there, and I was the nutritionist for the show at the time and doing all the guys' diets because they got to make weight in like 2 days at any given time. So that's just kind of crazy. So Dana's like, why don't you start your own supplement line? I'm like, why are you going to make me the official supplement of the UFC? And he's like, is that what you want? I'm like, why? So you take all the money? And he's kind of laughed about it, but I got home and I started thinking about it and put some things together, 4 products, and we just put them on Amazon and eBay. Didn't even have the website up yet, and it just took off. I mean, God just blessed it right off the bat. But because of my background, it wasn't like I was just, my picture's on the bottle and this and that, and then somebody else is making it. So through trial and error and everything I've used, I obviously know what I'm doing. So even the tagline for Fight Lab supplements is in the cage or on the stage. So between bodybuilding, like the fake muscle, if you will, you don't really have to be much of an athlete, all the way to getting in the ring and being the best athlete in the world through MMA, you're a modern day gladiator. I have the supplements for you. So whatever you need, I know what you need. So it's not just somebody's picture on the bottle and a bunch of guys in a lab are making it and then on to the next product. So I believe in what I make. I put everything, my heart and soul into it. And I have, I put pride into it, because that's what I believe in. So anything on these like 10 products that I have, it's mainly online. You don't find it in a lot of stores because they're just moving product and trying to worry about margins and keeping the doors open on a lot of these supplement stores. I'm mainly online. We have high repeat sales. The reason why is because each raw ingredient that goes into those products, if it's not the best or a patented thing that goes in there, I'm not going to put it in there. I don't skimp on anything. I don't just half it, and so if it's not the highest grade ingredient, and we bring these raws in from everywhere, and I just make it quality. So I'm not going to skimp on anything. Whatever I put in the product, it's just the highest grade. And so I go to sleep at night, and I sleep well knowing that I didn't rip anybody off. You're getting a quality product. So it's fightlabs.com. Nobody has any problem going online and getting on there. They love the products. We throw some samples in there. You're going to love everything we have. It's just not the normal stuff that's out there. Yeah, we have a protein, but hey, it's the best protein on the planet. All the products are the best. So I can guarantee that. No one will dispute that. And it just comes down to what you put inside of there. So I'm never going to skimp on anything or half-ass it. It's just all high quality. So fightlabs.com, Dan Freeman, and get on there and try it out. And thanks, guys. I appreciate the time and talking to you.
Right. And you train with some of the legends of the game, and obviously you created this with fighters in mind. So I really do appreciate you coming out with a product for fighters, by a fighter like yourself, and a bodybuilder. And so, Dan, I really do appreciate your time, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, you could just look back at anybody that knew the Lions Den or wants to Google those fighters' names. Look at all their physiques. They weren't bodybuilders. I was the only one that did the bodybuilding. I mean, Ken did a couple shows back when he was younger, but everybody looked like a bodybuilder, but yet they could still fight. They still had the cardio that they needed. They could still, Frank Shamrock, Guy Measure, look at their physiques. I mean,
do you ever send samples out to people?
Absolutely.
Huh.
And when somebody say you bought a jug of protein or something like that, or the test booster, that test booster is just off you can't even compare that to anybody else's stuff. But that test booster, it's got 5 plants in there. I go all over the world to get the best plants and put them together. And so the way it hits you, it's just not like something they sell on TV late at night in GNC. You won't even find it in GNC. They don't want it. And so it's too good. They just want to move something and get something else in there. So yeah, you go online and get that. But if you order a product, you'll get some samples of some other stuff. So we don't want you confused. So say you get that one product, we might put 1 or 2 things in there, samples. So you have a one-on-one time instead of getting it out at an expo or the Olympia or the Arnold Classic. You get home, you don't know what you got in that bag. It's a Halloween for adults. You got the sack. We never get anything back from that when we advertise there and sample stuff out there. They get home, they're trying 10 different things a day. So online, I got you one-on-one. You get your sample, you go home. Next thing you know, you're texting or emailing, going, "Hey, what was this? What's that all about? Hey, give me a bottle of that." And that's what I want. I want people to get results. I actually care about the people. So, you know, instead of, let's just make a bunch of money, let's change everybody's lives. Everybody's got this thing inside them about they want to lose at least 10 pounds. You know, what happens every January, New Year's resolution? They all want what? I just want to lose 10 pounds. I want to lose 20 pounds. So if you can make that dream come true and make somebody happy and make them feel good about themselves, then I did my job.
Absolutely. And Dan, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to go on the website right after the show is done. Go on fightlabs.com, order some of the product. Dan, thank you very much for your time. And
Absolutely,
I really do
brother. Appreciate you guys. God bless.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Mr. Dan, who trained with Lions Den. Very, very impressive. Glad that he was on the show. And he was actually on The Ultimate Fighter, and he actually was in Ken's corner. He was one of Ken's coaches when it was Ken versus Tito Ortiz. So, you know, he trained with Lions Den. He's part of the big names of the sport. So, hey!
What's happening?
What's going on?
Not much, man. Just excited to be here. This is great.
Chris Lytle, right?
Yeah.
MMA legend, former UFC fighter, Cage Rage world champion, and you actually dabbled in boxing, I hear. So you're actually a light heavyweight champion in boxing, correct?
That's correct. Seems weird, light heavyweight. So weird, like in UFC and whatnot. That's 205. In boxing, it's 175. A little different. So, yeah. I also had a couple bare knuckle matches as well a few years ago. So
glad you're on the show. And so obviously we're talking about Pancrase, and after your first win, so you and this blows my mind because in modern day, nowadays, like you have to cut your teeth in amateurs. You have to hopefully get a winning record before you get into like a professional league.
Sure.
Maybe you'll get on Titan, maybe you'll get in some other promotion. But you, after your first win, you went right to Pancrase and you fought against one of the veterans of the sport. Like, how did you get involved with Pancrase, and like how were you feeling going to your second bout where you fought against one of the legends?
Unfortunately, you know, when you look into that, that's very misleading because it's not true at all.
Okay.
Back then, most of my fights were in states that were considered unsanctioned, so they have not allowed any of those to be on the internet. They used to be on the internet. They were there a long time ago. Now they go back through and say, well, that's not a sanctioned fight because it's not a sanctioned state. However, I got paid. So in my mind, I'm a professional. Unfortunately for me, I've had probably 18 fights that aren't on my record. And somehow, I don't know how this worked out, but every one of them was a win. You know, it's like none of my losses are not on there. What kind of crap is that? That's not cool, dude. So they got rid of a lot of my wins. So I wasn't 0-0 and they are 1-0 and they sent me to Japan. I was like 11-0 and they sent me to Japan. So I had already cut my teeth in other organizations, a lot of things in the Midwest. But once again, none of that counts on your record now because nobody had commissions really. So somehow I was fighting a lot of Midwest promotions. I trained with a guy named Jason Gotze who was over there fighting over in Pancrase. His manager was a lady by the name of Phyllis Lee, and so when I would have fights, sometimes she would come because of her affiliation with Jason, and I just continued to go talk to her and impress her. And after just being undefeated in the Midwest and kind of clean up all the circuits around here, I kept asking her to go to Japan, and finally she said, okay, I'll send you over there. And that's how that was like my dream. That was my goal, was just to make it over Japan. I was telling people if I could just go there once, I'd be happy. And then that happened once. And then I was like, okay, I want to go again. And I want to go again. And I want to go again. And then it kept going.
Right. So, how was the experience dealing with like management of Pancrase when you first started communicating with them? How was dealing with them as far as business wise?
Well, once again, I didn't really deal with them. I dealt with Phyllis, and Phyllis had a very good relationship. If you want to go over Japan, you're pretty much going through Phyllis. So I would just deal with her, and to be honest with you, there wasn't much negotiation. It was just, this is a deal, and they treated everybody very well. I thought it was amazing to me. That's how I felt like I knew that I'd actually made it to become a professional fighter, because they treated you like a professional fighter there. Nobody else in the States did that. Even remember the first time I fought for the UFC under the SEG, it was not ran nearly as well as Pancrase was. And I remember I thought after that, I went back over and fought in Japan. I was like, this isn't going to make it. Luckily, for everybody who enjoys the sport. SEG sold to Zuffa not too long after that, but it was just a great organization, and they treated you well. But mainly, you know, they had the people that their managers that they dealt with, and mine was Phil Slee, and I kind of dealt with her, and she just kind of told me what was going to happen. And I just, you know, I was a young kid. I didn't really know any better. And I just, I loved every second of it because it was the first time I was treated like a real athlete.
Right. And one of my favorite fights with you, because I talk about it all the time, where it's all about like tape trading, where, you know, I found a tape of you fighting Minowa.
Yeah.
And Minowa actually fought in Pride.
Yeah.
Did you ever, like, from Pancrase, did you ever regret not fighting for Pride? Did you ever like want to like cut your teeth there, or was it like the whole goal was getting to the UFC?
Well, you know what? It was weird back then, and Minowa didn't fight in Pride for a while because you didn't do that. You know, when you were with a Japanese organization, there was a lot of that's who you're with. It was very, I think, disrespectful in a way to go to just fight around all over the place at the time, at least. So, you know, I fought in Japan for a lot, and then, you know, go over to fight in UFC. That was one thing, but I mean, go to fight in Pride. I would have felt like I was kind of slapping those guys in the face, and that's how they look at it. I don't think it was till like the end of Pride or the Pancrase really, or there's, you know, those guys like Minowa and those guys, their relationship I believe was severed. Maybe I'm not real sure, but when I was there, I felt like it was a no-no to go fight for another organization like that. And plus, at the time, Pride had no weight classes really. It was just one open weight class, and Pancrase was the same way at the time, but I mean, man, you had the biggest, best athletes in the world, I feel like, going over to Pride. But by the time that, you know, I think that they loosened up to where the people from Pancrase could go over to Pride. I was already signed with UFC, and then there was no really, they sure as hell weren't going to let you out to go fight over there.
Yeah. And what was the differences between working with a promotion in Japan and working with, obviously, the UFC? What were the differences with management and the differences with doing negotiations? Were there big differences, or what do you think?
Yeah, I felt like, especially with the Japanese, there wasn't much negotiation. It was kind of like, this is what you get, and that was kind of it. So I was, you know, and there wasn't. They were paying me better than anybody else, so I was happy to get it. You know, they were paying better than any place I got in the States. So if that's what the deal was, you know, and I would, you know, talk to Phyllis, and I'd be like, you know, can we get a raise? Can we get this? And you kind of had to be careful how you did it. It's just a little bit different negotiation tactics. But, you know, I thought that was revenue. I thought it was a different kind of feel and a different system, the way they did fights here. And it really wasn't necessarily like here. It seems like it's all about one thing and one thing only: wins and losses. So they will use that, like in the United States, or I say the UFC whatnot. They would leverage losses against you, and well, this guy beat you, and you have to get paid this and that. I felt like the Japanese way of thinking was a little bit different. It wasn't necessarily about whether you won or lost, because a lot of times you might be a 180-pound guy fighting a 250-pound guy. So it was more about, you know, your attitude, your how you fought. You know, if you went out there and you were entertaining and exciting, even if you had some losses, it didn't make as big of a difference. And I thought that was a wonderful thing, to have that mentality. The fans still loved you. Just if you went out there and you laid on the line, that's what people wanted to see. Not necessarily if you went out there and you fought a guy who outweighed you by 40 pounds and you fought, they loved it. You know, it's probably not real good right now to do that. People would be getting wrecked, but I mean, it just shows the mentality was a little bit different. It was more about the actual, you know, the Bushido spirit, I would say, of actually fighting, as opposed to, you know, they didn't want to see a guy go over there and take a guy down and hold him down for 3 rounds. That was not the goal. You had to go out there and fight in order to get good contracts. And that's why I think it should be everywhere.
Right. And that's what I love most about seeing Pride and seeing Pancrase and like these promotions in Japan, because Japanese audiences seem like they are so educated about the sport, where they'll remain in silence while they watch you fight. Like you can't hear a pin drop. They are so observant, and they're trying to kind of engage everything and kind of soak in everything. While American audiences are, you know, they're drinking beer, they're getting rowdy and going crazy. Like how would you compare the Japanese audiences as opposed to performing in front of American audiences? Like, did you like one more than the other? Did you like both? Or was there like a different transition playing in Japan then coming back to America? Like, how was the transition like?
100%. And it was just like you said. It was you might be very quiet for a while, but they're educated. Like you said, they're not just out there. You don't see anybody, kick his ass, stand him up. People understand what's going on, and they can appreciate that. And when something happens, when there's a near submission, the crowd gets excited. Then you hear a lot of cheering, and then they cheer, and then they'll clap. And when the guy gets out of the arm bar or he gets out of the triangle, and then it becomes quiet again because they understand what's going on. It's not just constant, yelling of names and people get mad and yell if things aren't going well. But I mean, that being said, I love fighting in America too because that does give you some energy when you start hitting somebody or you start landing some punches and that crowd gets going. Or let's say you're in a submission and people start cheering, it might give you a little bit to get out of that. So I like both. They're definitely both very different. There's pros and cons to both of them, though. And I would just say that the Japanese crowd, you don't get as many uneducated fans. Some people just want to come in the States. It seems like more just to drink beer and hang out, which is fine as well. But I just think they're very educated over there on what's going on at all times.
Absolutely. And what would you say is your favorite memory from working with Pancrase? From what was your favorite fight? What's your favorite memory from being in Japan?
Okay. Man, I just loved most of my time being over there. Always had a good time. I feel like I think probably my favorite memory was when I fought Minowa, just because he was a very big name fighter. He fought a lot of tough guys. Like I said, he did go over to fight in Pride. I think he might even had a win over Rampage. I can't remember, but he did some really good things. And I knew he's a formidable opponent. He's a Neo Blood champ and a real tough guy. And we had a really fun fight. That was one of those fights where I just feel like I kind of lost myself in it. I didn't care if there was 1,000 people there, none if it was on TV or not. It was just two guys just going after each other. A lot of headbutts were landed. I'd meet him in the head a couple of good times. It was just and that sounds sick, I know, to think like that. That's what I like, the fact that we were just really beating the brakes off each other. I know that sounds like I got some mental problems, but it's not true. I'm a decent guy. But it was just a lot of fun, and I always remember, to me, it's not just about going out there and wins, loss. It ended up being a draw, but it was just go out there and go against one of the best in the world at the time and come out, feeling like you did well. And that means more to me than if the judges. If they would have raised my hand in victory or raised his, whatever. We went out there and I was satisfied with what I did that night, and it was just a good feeling to go out there. I was over there and I trained with those guys. They train hard. They train 6 days a week, twice a day. Just some of the best people in the world, and especially at that time. I think it was maybe 2001 or 2000. I don't even know when it was, maybe 2002. But just to know you'll be able to go over there and go get some of the best of the world, and it's a good feeling. It makes you feel good about what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that, and it's an honor to share the same favorite fight of yours with you. So
Appreciate it.
I want to thank you for that. But, as a UFC legend, as an MMA legend, a pioneer of the game, obviously we're going to go to the next guest. But
Sure.
If you have any words or anything you want to share, and again, I thank you so much for your time.
No. The thing that I think is neat about this, and I think the thing that people don't realize is, even myself, when I first started fighting, I thought UFC was the start of this sport, and that, the first it was the beginning where they want to see what style would win, and they'd bring in a wrestler versus, a kickboxer versus a boxer, a sumo guy, whatever. No, over in Pancrase before that, they were really cross training. You had guys who were good at grappling, they were good at kickboxing, they were good at everything. So that had already been done. I didn't realize that. That's why if you look at the beginning, who came over and did really well? You had Boss Fruit, you had Ken Shamrock, you had Guy Mexico, you had a lot of good fighters who have already been doing this stuff forever. People didn't figure this out in the UFC. I remember the progression. It seemed like it went. Jiu-jitsu killed everybody. Then all of a sudden you get Mark Coleman. These wrestlers could come in there and learn the ground and pound technique. And then you had Maurice Smith who learned how to. Because I remember for a while I was like, who's going to beat these wrestlers? Nobody can ever beat these guys. That was the thought. I remember when Mark Kerr. I was like, nobody's ever going to beat this guy. I remember having conversations with people. That was literally said. But when people adapt and learn, this stuff had already been learned other places, and I didn't even realize that because I was still new. It wasn't until I started going over to Japan and started training, I was like, oh, okay, these guys I've been doing this for a long time. So that's what I want people to really understand is that this has more like history than people realize. And I want people to, understand how good the people were who were there and how they helped develop the sport in the direction that it went in. Maybe if you didn't have this group that already been doing this for years, maybe it takes UFC a couple more years to get to where it went. But I mean, I think this was something that really helped, like say Ken Shamrock learn this techniques that he used over in Japan. Then he comes back and he starts creating the Lions Den where he gets his young guys and trains them a certain way. That all came from over in Japan. That's what he learned over here in Pancrase. So he moved the sport in a certain direction, and it's moved since then. But I don't think people ever really understand that. So I want people to understand that, and that there's a lot of roots with this Pancrase organization. I'm just happy to have been part of it.
Absolutely. And with the documentary coming out and with you sharing your knowledge and dropping knowledge on us tonight, it's spreading that knowledge to other people and people that aren't familiar or people that are uninitiated to the journey that you went through. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge. And you're always going to be a legend in the game, especially in the UFC, Pancrase, anywhere you go, anything you do, you're always going to be a legend. I thank you so much for your time, Chris.
Hey, you're the man. I appreciate it. I'll send somebody else over.
Yes, sir.
See you guys.
Yes, sir. Chris Lytle, ladies and gentlemen. Holy shit. That man has been through some wars, and I'm glad I shared the same favorite fight with him, with Minowa. That was a great fight. It went to a draw. It was crazy. Wow. Unbelievable fight.
Hey, you guys want a really cool treat?
Yes, please.
Alive?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. How about King of Pancrase Guy Metzger?
No fucking way. Really? The legend himself. Whoa, shit. Guy Mesner, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I am doing great.
Where you
so
heading from?
What's up, sir?
Where's home?
Bayonne, New Jersey.
Okay. Oh, well, I'll hold that against you.
Florida.
So you obviously have a very extensive martial art background, 2 forms of karate, 5th degree black belt, 2nd degree black belt, and also in Taekwondo. Before we go into the journey with you in Pancrase, like, how'd you start with mixed martial arts?
Well, I'll give you the short version. Basically, it was, my, 26, 27, maybe 28, something like that. And, I was boxing, kickboxing. I wasn't making a lot of money. I had a lot of accolades and stuff like that, winning these titles, but not a significant paychecks, and I'm not getting any younger. And so I was kind of like, you know what? I'm gonna. You have to get a real job, which kind of was scary, right? And so what ended up happening was I saw the UFC, and I saw the guys fight. Now you got to understand, back to the old UFC days, it really wasn't a sport. It was a spectacle, right? And they really didn't push the athletes. What they did was they were pushing the different systems. Here's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, here's boxing, here's kickboxing. Which one's the better one, right? And so, so I was watching them fight, and they had a lot of really one-dimensional fighters in there, and I was like, oh, I can do this, because I was a high school All-American. I was a Division II wrestler. I was a national level judo player, and obviously world champion kickboxer and karate fighter. So I knew I had the skill set to do it, and I said, okay, so I'm going to go in there, I'm going to fight, and they're going to shut this thing down, because as much as we love our violence in America, the reality is that we try to pretend we're civilized. So we add rules to what's going on. Like, what is football really but 11 armored knights fighting another 11 armored knights, right?
Yeah.
And so I knew that the original format wouldn't last. It just kind of was insulting to the tastes of most Americans, even though sports go relatively safe, to be honest, compared to combat sports. It's one of the safer ones at the time, but the perception was bad, and so I knew they'd shut down. So I said, you know what, I'll go in there, I'll win this thing, and I'll retire. And so I went into UFC 4. They didn't put me in I lost the coin toss. Me and Anthony Macias tossed the coin to see who was going to the tournament. He won. I got in the alternate, wasn't really alternate position, but the fight just before the final. Then I was promised the UFC 5 fight. Oleg Tutarov was my friend. He had some problems with his visa, so he took my place. I was in alternate position again. And really what ended up happening was Pancrase offered me a big contract after UFC 5, and it rekindled. Well, now I'm making money, a lot of money, and so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll stick with this. This is what I want to do. So that's really the four-way in that, and so that's what it ended up being. I did a couple more boxing and kickboxing fights after that, but by and large, it was just almost MMA after that. Well, actually, no holds barred, then morphed into MMA after that.
And you were a three-time, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you're a three-time Pancrase champion. Incredible fights, incredible performances. But was it a lot of pressure, especially fighting in the same organization as Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, guys of the Lions Den? I mean, the tryout process was enough, to get into the gym and to train with these top-tier talent and the guys that I grew up looking up to and respecting, and the guys that I admired from afar. But was there a lot of pressure training with these guys, playing in the same organization, possibly being matched up with them in a tournament? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, well, to be honest, I mean, I welcome the idea of being part of that group because, the problem that I had, I love team sports. So I was a really good athlete. I was a 4-sport letterman in my freshman year. I was a 4-sport varsity letterman my freshman year in high school. The funny part is that I didn't letter in wrestling, and that's the one sport I went to college on.
Yeah.
but Guy Metzger. See, got fans still. And,
somebody needs to shut that.
Yeah, the problem is it's an ugly fat guy, and it could not like pretty girls like it used to be. So it's a little disappointing, but that's what happens at 52. And
I think he's 53.
Well, I'm 52. So
okay.
yeah, we don't even want to discuss his age. Either way, it's going to be painful for him.
You were the heartthrob of MMA, though. Come on, you were the heartthrob of MMA. I mean, come on, man.
I don't know about that, but yeah. But it was interesting trying to explain to people what I did for a living because people wouldn't believe I fought. They're like, "You fight?" I go, "Yeah." And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." Of course, you got to understand. Most of my career, you just couldn't Google it, right? Like you can now, right?
Right.
And, but actually, a funny story about that was when me and my wife moved in our new house. This is like 15 years ago. My next door neighbor comes over and he introduced himself. Real nice guy, and I was still fighting. I was really good shape. I was about 215, 220, and I didn't have my shirt on because I was moving a bunch. I was moving, and so I guess that made him a little uncomfortable because he started going. So he started talking about all this martial arts stuff, and he goes, "You participate in martial arts or anything like that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." I do. I was trying to fake modesty at least, and he goes, "Oh yeah," and he started going, and then he's talking. He starts telling me a bunch of stuff, and I start cracking up, and I go, "Actually, I do a little bit more than just do it." I said, "I fight professionally." He goes, and he could tell he didn't believe me. He goes, "Really? What was your name again?" And I was like, "Guy Metzger," and it was funny because I knew he was going home. He was going next door to Google it. He comes back later on. He's like laughing. He goes, "You probably think I'm the biggest goofball in the world." I go, "Yes, actually, I do." But you get that a lot. See, back in the day, you couldn't do that. There wasn't that kind of stuff. So yeah, it wasn't like people actually believed I fought for a living. You know what I mean? And so,
like my first exposure to Guy Metzger was when you fought Sakuraba in the World Grand Prix 2000, which I absolutely thought you won. And then the Japanese were like, "Call another round. We're going to have a tiebreaker round." It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, Guy Metzger absolutely won that fight. And Sakuraba was my favorite fighter. So, if I saw it that you won that fight, obviously there's a problem there. Did you ever felt like a certain bias, when working with Pancrase and the Japanese organizations? Do you ever find a certain bias, or what do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Come on, man. I mean, listen, I lost fights. I lost split decision fights. I knocked a guy down 3 times when I fought Little Nog. I put him on the mat 3 times. And I lose a split decision. I mean, come on, give me a break. You know,
It was
Arona, he quit that fight. That's why I stopped hitting him at that one point. He said like this, and I lose that fight by split decision. So yeah, do I believe there's bias? Yeah, but you know what? You kind of know it's going to be there, so you kind of surrender. You know, I don't act so indignant about it, because you kind of know that's what you're dealing with when you go over there. You know, and I was accustomed to that. Like, you know, when I was a young fighter, boxing and kickboxing, you know, most of my career outside of Dallas, outside of Texas, was being the opponent. Thing is, I would just, you know, I knew that I had to knock this guy out. Like, if I was going to some of the guys' hometown, I had to knock him out or I was going to lose that match. I knew that. And, so, you know, I just happened to knock just about everybody out. In fact, knocked everybody out I went out of town with. But you know, but I knew that was the case. And I knew that was going to be the case in Japan too, you know, and the difference is that the athletes were, they weren't tomato cans like a lot of my opponents in the early days were. They were tough guys. So if they could weather the fight, you know, then they probably won the decision, you know, and I kind of knew that was the case.
Right. And the reason why I was such a big fan of you, especially growing up and still a big fan of you to this day, is because you always fought the tough competition, no matter where, whether it's UFC, Pride, Pancrase, you always fought the top competition. But what would you say is the toughest opponent that you ever fought?
Toughest opponent I ever fought, man, there's a string of them. But I would say physically the toughest guy I fought was Chuck Liddell, because, you know, I knocked him down once in the fight, but I hurt him two other times in that fight. He just kept coming, and I put guys down. I hit him. I hit somebody that solid with the right hand more than once, and they're usually asleep. And he took some hard ass shots, and he came back and he knocked me out. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things. But you made that comment, yeah. You fight. Listen, when I was a kid, I grew up with the kind of self-esteem issues, you know, like a lot of us do. But I was going to be a somebody, you know, and athletics was kind of my vehicle. In order to be recognized and be remembered, you gotta be willing to take chances. You gotta be willing to fight the guys that nobody else wants to fight. And for me, that was important. I wasn't scared of these guys. You know, there was nothing they could do to me that hadn't been done to me before, you know, at some point or at things. And if I was going to be remembered, if people are going to remember who Guy Mesger was, it's because he was willing to fight the best. And I did. I fought, you know, I fought a laundry list of badasses, and did better sometimes than others, but that's just the way it goes. And I look at that part of my career with probably the best. I hold that with the most pride.
Absolutely. And what was your favorite Pancrase memory? You know, just looking back in that organization and fighting for that organization, what was your favorite memory?
Okay, well, I'll answer twofold. My favorite fight was when I beat Funaki for the title. It wasn't one of my more exciting matches, but it was one of my smartest matches. Funaki had beaten me twice before. The only guy's ever beaten me twice, and he broke my leg the first time we fought. He broke my arm the second time we fought, and so everyone pretty much thought he was going to beat me a third time. But you know, to be honest, I just outsmarted him, and so I would say that was my favorite fight in Pancrase. Actually, probably one of my favorite fights ever. And then, but I say my favorite memories, to be honest, was the camaraderie that we had. It was interesting because we would fight like cats and dogs against our opponents, and then that night, you know, a lot of the Japanese fighters and the European fighters would come out with us, and we'd have drinks and food and hang out, and it was just a different sense of stuff. There wasn't this huge animosity. Everybody wanted to win. Everybody was intense on winning. Everybody would do it, but there was a camaraderie in the fact that we were doing that. There was a respect that you don't see a lot today, you know, and that's probably one of the reasons why it was so much fun for me, because you know I don't necessarily enjoy hurting my fellow man. You know what I mean? I really don't. Not even for money, which is a motivator. But you know, the fact is that it was just a great feel. You know, you go out there and you do war, and then you were done, and you go have dinner with the guy or have drinks or something, and it was cool. I like that.
Yeah, and from a strategic standpoint, fighting against Funaki, like you showed how well of a strategist you really are in the ring, which I always appreciate and always admired. Was it hard to adjust to Pancrase rules, like especially like going to the UFC and you have UFC rules and pride, and with Pancrase it was like a little bit different. Like you can grab the ropes and like break out and like 10 counts, and like was it like difficult to adjust?
I mean, not really. I mean, to be honest, man, I mean, I'm a smart guy. I figure it out. Like I don't usually do anything without figuring the shit out first. All right. So, it's like when I stepped in there, I knew, I had done my research already. I saw about 20 hours of Funaki and Suzuki and all those guys competing. I understood the strategies and the nature of the game. I knew how to, it was different. Like I said, the part that was kind of different, that was the fact that you were technically allowed to hit the guy when you were on the ground. It was MMA rules. I mean, to be honest, you could do it, but the difference is that you weren't considered an elite fighter if you did that. When it hit the ground, you went for submission. You went to show them your wrestling and your submission ability. That was the elite fighter. The guys who were primitive, the guys who were considered low budget, were the guys that hit on the ground because they didn't have any other skills. So that was kind of different. That was a little different because to be honest, I mean, with my wrestling ability and their inability to wrestle, a lot of those fights would have ended in about 2 minutes if I decided to hit them on the ground.
Right. So my final question, and obviously I'm talking to one of my heroes of the game, and obviously one of the MMA pioneers. You retire in 2003 with a win. You're at the next stage of your life where MMA. You're now retired, and obviously I hope you're happy and healthy. And what's the one takeaway that you take away from your MMA career that you can pass on to the next generation of fighters?
Man, there's a laundry list of things, but I would say the thing is that you got to understand this is all temporary. Okay, all right. This is never going to last forever. All right. Now I had a 17-year-long professional fight career because I started real young in boxing and kickboxing and all that kind of stuff. But even 17 years is not that long, right? Not in the amount of dedication. So I tell these guys, you got to understand that it's going to end. So you have to maximize your brand as much as you can while you're in the sunlight. You know what I mean? You got to be able to do that. And then you also have to have this stuff, you have to have some of a game plan to do something else, because the last thing I ever wanted to do was be that guy. And these guys that sit around and they tell the same freaking story over and over and over again. The only thing worse than the fishing stories like that are fighter stories. All right. You're like, I remember you knocked him out with the round kick. Yeah. All right. And I didn't want to be one of those guys. And life shouldn't be like that. I mean, you should have adventures all the time. I went, with me, I was very fortunate. Mark Cuban bought my consulting business, and I was president of his television company. And then also I went back to school and became a doctor. So, the thing is that, I tell these guys, don't limit yourself. Enjoy your time in the sun and do that. But also understand that it's going to end, and be ready to do something else. Have another adventure in your life. I enjoy being a doctor. I enjoy the idea of helping people a lot more than I do hurting them. And so there's, and again, it's where I am in life. I'm 52 years old. I got this amazing wife, and I'm not actually doing the charming. My wife is actually that amazing. And oh, she is, man. I mean, I'm kidding you. She's so good looking. It's crazy. And she's the nicest human being you'll ever meet. Right. So, and I got beautiful children, I got 3 amazing kids. And so, yeah, life is good for me, but it doesn't, but it's also because I kind of understood that this was going to be a temporary thing. I understood I couldn't do it forever. And, and I kind of made plans for it. I didn't necessarily plan to become a president of a television company. That kind of happened, but I had planned on maybe going back to school. I had planned on doing some other stuff that, business wise, that was, not martial art or fight oriented. And, you just got to be ready for that. Like I said, maximize the fun, maximize your time while you're there, maximize your brand. You might make retirement money. I mean, you may not, but most people won't. And then even if you do, you still have to have other adventures afterwards. You know what I mean? You don't want to be one of those stale guys telling the stupid stories over and over again. Nobody's going to give a shit. Even your kids won't give a shit. In fact, what they'll do when you start losing your mind is behind your head, they'll start going, now, and I haven't quite lost my mind.
Right. And you're a guy I grew up watching. You're a fighter I grew up watching, and you lived up to my every expectation just talking to you. And I thank you very much. I thank you very much for your time. Anything else you want to say? Anything you want to promote? I leave the floor to you.
No, I just appreciate it. I appreciate you guys, showing some interest. I am really kind of excited about this project because, the Pancrase brand is a really cool brand. If you think about all the champions from the USC that came from Pancrase, it really was a training ground for all these champions. It was for me, and I just wish the guys out there, the young fighters out there, that they fight smart, they fight tough, they keep their health in mind because they will eventually outgrow. You never beat the only undefeated champion of all time in the fight business is Father Time. He whoops everybody's ass eventually, and so when he whooped your ass, it's time to retire, and you should do other things with your life, just as exciting.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Guy Mesner, for your time. I really do appreciate it. And it's an honor to have you on the show. You're welcome back anytime. Love to talk more about your MMA career. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
You're the man. Wow.
All right. Well, that was awesome.
One legend after another. Oh, my God. My head's about to explode.
Listen, I'm not a legend. You know why I'm not a legend? Because I still have to take out the trash. Once you stop taking out the trash, then you become a legend. You see, my wife, she's telling me to take the trash out one day. And, of course, I'm sitting there and I tell her, 15 times that I'm going to do it, but I'm in the middle of something. Doorbell rings. It's a UPS guy, right? So I have to sign for this package. And he asked me to spell my name. So I spell it. And he goes, Mesger. Are you Guy Mesger? I go, well, yeah. And he goes, dude, you're a legend. And my wife walked up, throw the trash in my hand, goes, the legend has to take out the trash. I'm like, legends do not take out the trash. So as soon as my wife takes me off trash duty, then you can call me a legend. But until then, I'm not a legend.
So in my eyes, you are, but, to each their own, different strokes for different folks. But to me, you will always be a fucking legend. You'll always be a pioneer in this game. And thank you for building up the sport to what it is today. It's because of guys like you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, Guy.
Have a good one, guys.
You too.
All right.
Wow. Unbelievable. I'm speechless.
That's pretty awesome. I wonder who's next on the gauntlet.
I'm talking to every one of my childhood heroes. I'm trying not to act like a nerd. So everyone watching, I'm so sorry, but I'm talking to everybody I grew up watching. Tape trading and getting DirecTV at my dad's camper so we can watch Pride fights and Pancrase and UFC. I'm talking to every single legend I've ever grew up watching. So my mind's blown. So I apologize if I act like a nerd, but I'll believe it.
It looks like we're still waiting for the next guy. So we almost got somebody. All right. So you want to talk a little bit more about Pancrase while we're waiting for the next guy?
Yeah, you know what? I'm very much excited for the documentary. I think the documentary is going to be very helpful. And Guy and Chris Lyle can share their war stories and they can share their fights and share their journey throughout Japan and fighting for this great organization. But I think the documentary is going to speak for itself. We're hearing a couple of stories, from some prominent, amazing MMA fighters, but there's so much to be told about this organization, how much they helped build the sport. So I can't wait for this documentary to come out where it's gonna show a new,
He was saying
exactly the great fights that these fighters actually fought in Japan. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Did you know that the Fight Labs was Dan's?
I literally had no idea. I'm learning about that, and I think FightLabs.com is I can't wait to order from it right when we get off the show. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to order some of the product, and obviously if you train with Lions Den, and you saw the physique of Frank Shamrock and Ken Shamrock back in the day, their physiques were amazing, and they were unlike no other. So obviously,
Really? Whoa. Hold on, wait.
Not this guy again.
Not this guy. You want something?
How about Boss Rutan?
What?
Oh, do I sit right in front of him? I sit right in front of you guys. Uma.
Boss Rutan.
Mr. Beth Rubin.
It's 2 keys of Pancrase I've given you so far.
It's amazing.
You
Unbelievable.
are the man.
Thanks. I'm not wearing the crown though.
UFC Hall of Famer, movie star, commentator for Pride, former king of Pancrase. And I actually met you at the PFL in Madison Square Garden.
Oh,
Bass
right.
Rubin.
Oh, he remembers.
That's completely. I remember that. It was right after the. I never went.
How you doing, boss?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to see all my old buddies from Pancrase. You know, all these guys: George Burnett, Guy Metzger, Chris Lytle. It's a good time.
Great. So what have you been up to? Because you have so many projects in the pipeline. I mean, you know, you're a multi-talented guy, and beyond fighting, well, what have you been up to?
You know, I work for Karate Combat, which is a full contact karate league. I'm the fight ambassador, so to say, for them. And then because I had severe asthma as a kid, I came up when I was 14 years old with a lung training device. I started making it, and now it's helping people with asthma. Mine asthma is completely gone, like a lot of people. So right now it's catching a lot of wind, so a lot of focus goes into that.
Awesome. And getting back on the Pancrase, and obviously, I can't wait to watch the Netflix documentary or the documentary itself, where you guys are a part of it, educating people about this incredible part of mixed martial arts. You're a part of that too, and a big part of that as well. Your 2 battles with Osami through 1997 were absolutely phenomenal. With the Shamrock Brothers, the Lions Den, knocking out Funaki. But my question is, I've always wondered this: what was your toughest fight in Pancrase?
The toughest, I would say Funaki, the rematch with Funaki. I lost. My first loss was actually against Funaki, and then when I fought him the second time, I was a complete different fighter. Now I knew the ground game. Now I understood it, and that it for him it was a slaughter. I knocked him down 4 times. I mean, my knees were afterwards. I had bruises on my knees, on my palms from hitting him in the head. I broke both cheekbones, his nose. But every time he went down, he got back up. And every time the audience started, when he was down, everybody go, Funaki. And then he started moving, and he went back up, and I go, shut up, you know, because I was tired by now, because I was unloading on everything that I had. But then eventually, I grabbed him by the hair. I remember that, because believe it or not, you were allowed to do that. And I drilled the knee in his face as hard as I could, and that thankfully that kept him down. So for me, they always say that was my best fight, but they say for Funaki, it was his best fight as well, because he showed so much heart. It was insane.
Right, and you have a huge following in Japan. Like, and I've always wondered, because you won the King of Pancrase, I believe, in 1995. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Bass. You're the boss here, but you won the King of Pancrase in 1995, I believe, and you know, you commentating for Pride, but what made you leave this huge audience that love you for the UFC, you know, back in 1999?
Well, I remember I was Marco Huas was one of my friends, and I met Marco, and we just walked out to the bank. I had to pick up some money from the bank, and people jumped on Marco Huas, and they go, "Hey, Marco, how you doing?" And they go, and I realized, because he was the UFC 6 champion, that everybody was watching the UFC. Now, I fought a lot in Japan, but the regular people in America didn't know me, and I was already in America. I wanted to do something in movies or TV business, whether it's acting, stunts, fight choreography, anything. I just wanted to work in the movies. So I figured, you know, if I go to the UFC, people will know me. And since I already beat a bunch of these guys that I was going to fight, I go, yeah, let's go to the UFC. And, you know, it worked. I won the UFC title, and then, you know, my acting career started taking off, and you know, got a TV show out of it inside MMA, and slowly but surely everything started becoming better for me.
Absolutely. And so, in your professional opinion, and going through the ranks, and obviously you work with all sorts of different MMA projects, like, how did Pancrase affect MMA today? Like, and I've always wondered this, like, how did that promotion affect the MMA we see today right now?
It's insanity if you really think about it. First of all, we started before the UFC started. And I remember this because Ken Shamrock was on our show, the first event that I had. It was September 93, September 21st. Never forget it. It was the first time I fought. I actually went on a plane. I never been on a plane. And then I was a 13-hour plane ride to Japan, and it was a complete different world. It was so crazy. I didn't realize there was no weigh-in, which I thought it was weird. And I thought it was a round system. So the day of the fight, I figured, well, I'm fighting a Japanese guy, so he's probably on weight. But then this big, tall Japanese guy, 6'3", walks up to me, shakes my hand. I say, oh, are you the promoter? And he says, no, I'm fighting you. And I go, you're fighting? What is your weight? He says, 235. He said, what are you? I said, like 198. You know, it's. And so then the promoter walked up and he said, I said, wait a minute, is he not too big? He says, no, Mr. Rutter, there's no weight classes. I said, no weight classes? Yeah. I go, okay. Okay, tell me another thing. I said, how many rounds are we fighting? He says, just 1 round. I go, 1 round? I said, it's awesome. How many minutes? He goes, 30. And I go, oh, yeah. Awesome. But of course, inside I was freaking out. Then this whole thing happened. I knocked the guy out, and it was a crazy fight. And then the next day, people stopped bowing to me on the street. And that's when I realized, you know, I always compared it to the movie Rollerball, the old movie. They did a remake of it like a bunch of years ago, but the Rollerball, that we're in the future, everything is really good, the piece is there, and the only outlet they have is this super violent sport, Rollerball. And I said, this is going to be the biggest thing ever. And then, of course, the UFC started. Ken Shamrock was telling me in the dressing room about the UFC that he was going to do it. They locked the cage. There's no referee, and you can do whatever you want. I go, dude, I don't think that's a smart idea. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, if I get knocked out, you know, and the guy jumps on top of me, I like somebody to pull him off because I don't like to get hit in the face 10 more times because I could get brain damage. He says, oh, no, I love it. I go, I think it's a crazy thing to do. And boom, first UFC we saw. And then later on, we realized, well, how many UFC champions did we have from Pancrase? That was a whole bunch. I think we had like 5 or 6 of them from one organization, a smaller organization that produced 5 or 6 UFC champions. So we were doing something good. So I think that Pancrase was really the stepping stone for all of us, for all these fighters here, to the UFC and to general mixed martial arts.
Now, if Pancrase kicked off today, and especially in the current MMA climate, do you think Pancrase would be successful? Do you think it would find a niche, like a niche market, especially for the current MMA audience?
I think it's going to be 100%. But you mean the old style rules, or you mean the new rules that I have right now?
Well, the old style rules when you fought, where like you grab the ropes, you have to break it up, 10 count, like all that fun stuff.
People always talk about that, and I truly believe that's why the Pancrase fighters were so good. Because if you look at my record, I have, I believe, 15 submissions and 13 knockouts, or 11 knockouts. But if you see how many times, I think I submitted 51 people, you know, because there was the rope escapes. Now, understand this, you know, if somebody got in a choke, for the people at home who don't know these rules, you know, for instance, if I had somebody in a choke, but he could touch the rope, I had to let him go. Now the fight restarts, and there's your second fight, so to say. So sometimes in one fight, you had like 4 submissions, but every time you get back on your feet, and then the fight starts again. So the ring time that you have is enormous. And plus, the strategy is different. You have to watch out that you don't get close to the ropes. And, you know, there's a whole different strategy going in. And I truly believe because of those rules that we were so comfortable, because you fought in one night, you could fight 4 fights, but in one fight. You see what I mean? You have more ranked up. Normally, when I submit somebody in MMA, the fight will be over. Not there. If they touch the ropes, you have to get back up. So I truly love these rules. I think right now in this day and age, I think it will be very good as well. Especially, you know, rear naked chokes, all that stuff with the MMA gloves. It's much harder to pull off with an MMA glove than without the MMA glove. The only thing that I would say that they should watch out for is the shoes. I wouldn't do the shoes anymore. It was very hard on Pancrase. Like I broke a guy's shin bone in half with an inverted heel hook, and then another guy got shot. And so they outlawed heel hooks, which I don't believe you should do in MMA, of course. But I think when you have just, you know, maybe kicking without shin guards, I would love that. And then without shoes, but open hand strikes, I think it would be great.
Absolutely. So I saw you fight in the UFC, and I also heard you commentate for Pride. So you're essentially the voice of my childhood when I watched Pride Fighting Championships. I always wondered the reason why, because whenever MMA was brought up back then, it was always UFC and Pride, UFC and Pride. How did Pancrase ever have a working relationship with Pride and K1? Because K1 and Pride had this big event. It was at the Tokyo Dome. It was I think it was an Olympic Stadium actually.
Olympic Stadium,
Dynamite 2002. Did Pancrase ever have a working? Yeah, did they ever have a working relationship with K1, Pride, or any like UFC people?
No, they did have, you know, of course, there were fighters from Pancrase who fought at Pride Fighting Championships, but I don't think they had the relationship like the K1 had. That show, that was a crazy show. That's where Bob Sapp got introduced. You remember that was a crazy fight against Minotauro Nogueira, who he pile drived into the ground. I literally, when I was commentating, I thought, okay, here we got our first death in the fight, because he just lifted him upside down and he put him on his head, pile drove him into the wall, neck first. It was crazy. And then Jerome Lopera knocked out Don Fry. I mean, it was the wildest show. I remember they came in on parachutes. They came in on parachutes to the center ring, and dude, the wind was freakish hard. I mean, there were like signs blowing over. I go, this is gonna go wrong. Someone's gonna get injured, but somehow nobody got injured. So yeah, unfortunately, they didn't have that relationship, but we had fighters from Pancrase fighting in a Pride Fighting Championships.
Right, I remember that event because Kazushi Sakuraba fought Mirko Cro Cop in the main event. They had Antonio Inoki lighting the flame. Like, it was supposed to be like the Olympics of mixed martial arts, and K1 fights, Pride fights. It was an amazing event, and you were also commentating of that. So obviously you lived through it. So what was your favorite memory of fighting in Japan and fighting in Pancrase?
Just the people, just the fans. I remember my first fight. There was a couple with a baby. And I don't know who brings a baby to a mixed martial arts event, first of all. But second of all, I mean, they asked me to hold the baby and make pictures with him. And I felt like the president, you know. Like I said, you have to understand, in Holland, you drive everywhere. Like, I live in California. If I drive to Vegas, well, that same distance in Holland, I'm in Paris. You know, it's a completely different country. So to have that long trip and come and see these buildings that I've never seen in my life. In Holland, everything is so small, you know. And then the first fight, and then after I knocked the guy out, the next day, walking on the street, people started bowing to me, and I go, "What is going on?" And then I realized that the Tokyo Post, the cover picture was me hanging in the air in the splits. I didn't even know that I was doing the splits. It was just a euphoric thing that I just did. You know, I had no clue, and then I realized, oh shit, I did that. Now I had to do. Now it became the root and jump. I had to do it every single time. I go, wow. But it was wild because people would recognize you, and they start talking to me and bowing to me. People I didn't know, and the embrace, you know. If in Holland, you have to understand, if a foreigner comes in and he fights Thai boxing and he beats a Dutch guy, you know, he's probably going to need security to get out of the house there, you know, so to say. In Japan, I knocked out a Japanese guy, and all these people are embracing. Put a baby in my hand, you know. I mean, it's the wildest thing. It was best experience ever.
Now, I remember when you're on commentating. And they were alluding to, I think it was Stephen Quadros that alluded to you with a fight with Vanderlei Silva. How close was that fight being materialized in Japan?
It was pretty close. It was for the Dynamite show, actually. But they wanted me to do MMA, and I said, listen, I didn't train for 3 years, right? I said, I have about 2 months. I'll strike with him. Listen, everybody wants to see a strike anyway. So why don't we put on the Pride gloves and we do K1 rules? I said, I would love to do that. And they said, okay, let us negotiate. But then the negotiation, it didn't happen. It was a different opponent. And people go, oh, he was afraid. No, Vanderlei is not afraid of anybody. So just don't worry about that. It was probably they had a better choice, I guess.
And you've done it all, like in mixed martial arts. And you're a pioneer and a legend to a lot of us, including me. Like, is there something that you feel that you haven't accomplished, or opponent that you wish that you actually fought?
No, you know, I always wanted to fight Hickson, and everybody always misunderstood that. I thought I didn't like Hickson, and no, I do. I just was just a phenomenal ground fighter, and I was just wondering if I could stay abroad with him. And I always wanted a rematch with Ken also, because you know, I never had once I had my real submission skills. After my last loss against Ken, that's when I started training 2-3 times a day on submissions, and I never lost a fight anymore. I actually won my next 8 fights by submission suddenly, because I just got the hook. I got obsessed with it, and it was the only thing I did day, night. I mean, I will wake up my wife. This happened a whole bunch of times, that I would dream a submission, wake up my wife in the middle of the night, put her in that submission, would ask her where it would hurt, the shoulder, whatever it was, write it down. Next day I would try it out in sparring. You know, and it's, you know, like anything, if you become obsessed with it, and I just loved all the combinations. I had no clue that it was such a powerful sport. I remember me against Frank Shamrock. Like Frank tries to take me down. I sprawl and I stand up, and he says, "Come on, come to the ground." And I remember me saying to him, "No, stand up, fight like a man." And I go, every time when I see that, hear me saying that, I go, man, I was such an idiot, because the ground fighting is way more dangerous Think about this. A good submission guy can dislocate or break pretty much any joint and bone in a person's body, whatever he wants. I want to dislocate your knee, there's a heel hook. Want to break your knee, there's a knee bar. That's whatever you want to do. You want to break an ankle, a toe hold, or break a shin bone. I mean, that's a big power to have as a ground fighter. But we were so programmed that the strikers were the tough guys that you go, I don't want to do that sissy stuff because there's two guys rolling on the ground. But once I realized the power of submissions and the combinations, the emphasis, it's one of those things that you will never master. You'll never be good at it. You know, you can always get better. That's what I love about it. But that's actually what I miss the most right now because I have bad knees. I have no cartilage on my kneecaps, which that means if I sit 15 minutes on my knees, that's going to feel that the next 3-4 days. And I really dislike that. I wish that it would still roll on the ground because every workout when I was training before fights, every single workout you would come up with somebody go, oh, wow, I never knew this. You know, I mean, that's pretty amazing if you've been doing it for so many years and every time you figure something new out.
Absolutely. And, you know, obviously I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm going to ask one more question. You know, the man, the myth, the legend, the GOAT, Bas Rutten.
No.
What advice can you give to the next generation of mixed martial art fighters and also the people that are going to be watching this documentary on Pancrase, the people that are uninitiated? What do you hope that they learn and they take away from this documentary? One last question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Give it me one more time. There's something happened here. I touched something on the iPad, and suddenly I did. I'm sorry. I was just tapping. I go, where is it? And then I saw it here.
Boss, don't even worry about that, brother. So the one thing that you wish that MMA fans can take away from this Pancrase documentary, what's the one thing that you wish that they take away?
Well, it's where it started. You know, I truly believe this is where it started. I think they should look into it because, you know, if you're really hungry about mixed martial arts and you want to know its roots, you know, I think you should go and watch the Pancrase fights, the documentary, because then you see that's where a bunch of stars were born. If we call it like nowadays, if you at this level, it will be a whole different ball game. So, yeah, I think going back to the roots, but unfortunately, it's like, for instance, when The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, he announced that he was going to do the movie with Mark Kerr. He was going to play Mark Kerr. You know, yeah. I think that 20% of the people were applauding because all the other people didn't have any clue. And I go, man, it's so cool to watch that documentary. I was Mark Kerr's coach.
Right.
The Smashing Machine documentary was the highest watched, I think, till this day, even documentary that HBO ever had. So it was a really amazing person, an amazing fighter. People should know where they come from, and that's what they have with Pancrase. Pancrase started even way before that. So check it out, see the rules, embrace it. Don't start complaining and say, oh, that's kind of a stupid rule, that's kind of a stupid thing. No, just look at it with an open eye and say, wow, that's actually pretty cool. And then you see all the guys that came from Pancrase who started going out, sprouting out in the world. And, well, UFC was the first big show, and a lot of them became UFC champions. So, yeah, that's where it was born.
Absolutely. And Bas Rutten, UFC Hall of Famer, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for dropping some knowledge. And I can't wait to see you in that documentary. So thank you very much for your time, Bas Rutten.
Thank you very much. Godspeed, guys.
You too.
Hey, thank you. Oh, let me see.
Bas Rutten, ladies and gentlemen.
Eric?
All right.
And we're waiting for our final guest. Who do you think it is?
Well, if I was going to take a guess, Josh?
Could it be Josh Barnett?
Could be.
It could very well be.
All right, let me message. All right, I think we got a few minutes here.
Very good. Very good.
Is there anything interesting about him we can talk about?
Yeah, so Josh Barnett is a very good pro wrestler and also a very good MMA fighter as well. So everybody knows him as the youngest. Well, you might not know this, but he's the youngest UFC heavyweight champion. And, you know, he's had a very prominent UFC career. He also fought in Pancrase in 2003, I believe. And I actually watched that. It was August 31st of 2003 where he won the King of Pancrase when he beat Yuki Kondo. He did the complete reverse where a lot of these guys that actually spoke started with Pancrase before branching off and going to the UFC. However, Josh Barnett was the complete reverse, where he actually fought in the UFC and then he went to Pancrase and he actually fought in 2003. But he was also pro wrestling and he did Pancrase at the same time. So very interested to hear about that. What do you think?
I'm very interested to hear about it too.
Oh yeah. Can't wait. I'm sweating right now. Oh my goodness. We talked to all these legends. All the,
it is a little
sport.
It is a little hot in the studio.
Oh yeah.
Too many. I think we need to talk to the guys about turning the lights down.
And it's great to talk to these guys. It's great to talk to Bassaroo. It's great to talk to Chris Lydell. It was super great to talk to Dan with FightLabs.com and talk about his supplements and how he plans to help out the future of the sport. Guy Mesner obviously blew me away because he had a lot of realistic, good advice that he could pass down to future generations. You know, it's just dropping knowledge. That's what it's all about. You know, the generation that helped build the sport is now passing down knowledge to keep it going. So
right,
super commendable.
I just sent the SOS. We're ready for the next guest. I don't know how much time that's going to take. Oh. Eric seems to be moving right along.
We will wait for the next guest.
That's what we'll do.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk to. This is the main event. Josh Barnett. I have a lot of questions for Josh Barnett.
Yep. We do have some people coming up next week for the program, which next week is UFC fighter Kama Worthy, Andre Ewell, and a Titan fighter, John Birdsong. The first two are actually from UFC.
Right.
So
very excited to talk to them. Very excited to talk to UFC fighters that are actually coming up, and also Titan fighter. Obviously, Titan is a big promotion, obviously with UFC Fight Pass, and they promote Titan. So
yeah, I'm not too fond of Titan right now. They've stolen our. Sure. Let me play something here real quick.
I'll be right back with
while we're waiting for the next guest.
Perfect.
Perfect. How are we doing so far? We lost a co-host.
Yeah, we did. He had to make an emergency pit stop. So
okay. We got one more. And he is the current openweight king of Pancrase. And his name is Josh Barnett.
Hey, before he comes on,
yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the event that's actually going on now?
We're all drinking and doing drugs.
Well, that's a given. You're in Hollywood, right?
We are developing a series for a streaming network, which I can't name at this moment. And we are doing a 4-part documentary on the history of Pancrase.
Okay.
Starting with the history back in 1680. But the second segment, which is hosted by Joe Malenko, who was trained by Carl Gotch since the age of 14, is narrating an entire section on Kama-sama, who is the god of wrestling, Carl Gotch. If it wasn't, you know who came up with the name Pancrase?
I have no idea.
Carl Gotch.
Okay.
You know who trained Fujiwara and Antonio Inoki?
Yeah, I don't know.
Carl Gotch.
Is that going to be the answer for every?
No, Carl Gotch trained Fujiwara, Jody Malenko, and Inoki. Fujiwara trained Masafunaki and Minoru Suzuki. Masafunaki and Minoru Suzuki trained Ken Shamrock.
Right.
Ken Shamrock trained Guy Metzger.
And the rest is history.
And what makes me sad is you host one of the best fight shows on the universe, and the world has stopped you from learning who Carl Gotch is.
It is true.
Right. If it wasn't for Carl Gotch, there'd be no UFC. Think about it.
All right. Well, I think we are ready for the next.
We were just talking.
We're back.
You let the dog out?
A little bit.
So I was just telling him I got you one more guest.
Okay.
And he's the current open weight king of Pancrase.
Really?
Yeah, Mr. Josh Barnett.
Mr. Josh Barnett.
Josh Barnett. Josh Barnett. Here he comes. There's a little extra something in your check this week.
Hey,
Ew,
don't walk off with that.
it's already spent. Look at this.
Former UFC champion, the youngest heavyweight champion, and King of Pancrase, Josh Barnett. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. And so, where do I start? You know, you're a pro wrestler, you're an MMA fighter, and obviously you had a great career in both. So you had an incredible run in UFC. You captured the belt, and then you started pro wrestling in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And while you were pro wrestling in New Japan Pro Wrestling, that's when you fought in Pancrase. I believe it was August 31st, 2003, that you fought against Yuki Kondo, and you actually beat him for the Openweight Championship.
Yeah.
So was there a working relationship between New Japan Pro Wrestling and Pancrase? That was the one thing I was always wondering.
No, actually, it was something that I facilitated. Through my connections in Japan, I went and directly approached Pancrase.
Right. What was it, like a one and done, or did you want to fight?
No, the plan was to create inroads there, and even to potentially bring over some of the younger New Japan talent while they're still young lions, and get them experience in MMA to more fully round them out as professional wrestlers.
Right. So, and you're continuous in pro wrestling. So you're constantly training people in pro wrestling. You're continuously pro wrestling. Did you ever see any pro wrestlers that you came across that would actually do a very good job in mixed martial arts or fight in Pancrase? What's your feeling on that?
No, I mean, all in the day, we're all trained to be shooters as well as workers, and a lot of guys came in with already martial arts or combat sports backgrounds like judo and karate, Muay Thai, wrestling. And I figured, while they're young, while their name is still yet building, so if they go out there and they lose, no harm, no foul, but the experience would be invaluable. And there was plenty of people that could have fulfilled that role. There's still guys in New Japan that have fighting potential that are there. And in fact, one of them trained with me. His name is Sho, and he's one of the Roppongi 3K tag team. And he came and he trained with me for about a week, and he had an amateur MMA bout set up in Jersey, but it got canceled, or his bout got canceled, something like that. And then I also trained a kid named Alex Coughlin out of the New Japan dojo here in LA for about a month, where he came and trained with my UWF USA team. So there's still guys there with talent, with capability to shoot and what have you, various levels. But New Japan Pro Wrestling has a long-standing tradition of training wrestlers as real fighters first, or at least that's how it used to be.
Yeah, and I always love the Japanese pro wrestling style, especially that strongman style. Nakamura actually brought it over to the WWE and introduced American audiences to it. And you have that same strongman style where it's hard hitting, action packed. Do you think that's the reason why Pancrase appealed to both audiences, both pro wrestling and mixed martial arts? Because as a strongman style, and also it has mixed martial arts, and it's kind of like the perfect mix, and also with the standard 10 count, it has something for everybody. Is that the reason why you felt that it captured an audience?
Well, I mean, it is 100% derived from professional wrestling. I mean, the rules for Pancrase are essentially the rules for professional wrestling. And there is, well, I mean, there's a massive amount of talent that was within Pancrase, which made for incredible fights, especially when you have that level of international talent. These athletes that would go on to become UFC champions, or people that were champions from other countries, from the Netherlands or from Brazil or what have you, all showing up in Pancrase to show their wares. But for me, part of it was I grew up, well, at least some of my early introduction into MMA included Pancrase, and those guys were seen as pioneering, top shelf ace athletes of a new sporting endeavor in combat sports with mixed martial arts. And so seeing guys like Funaki and Shamrock, both Shamrocks, Guy Mesger, Bas Rutten, Minoru Suzuki, I mean, wow, okay. These guys are top level.
Right, and you also helped out and trained and worked with Shayna Baszler, correct?
Yeah, no, I trained Shayna Baszler since 2000, and she's been my student since 2007, I think, maybe. And I trained her as an MMA fighter, trained her in catch wrestling, along with sending her to go train under Billy Robinson here and there. And I managed and guided her career as a fighter. And then at one point it was a conversation between us about what she wanted to do. And I suggested that perhaps she should get into professional wrestling since she was getting so interested in it at the time. And she said, yeah, I'm down. So then I went and took her from being on the journey of being an MMA fighter. And then I brought her on the journey of being a professional wrestler all the way to the WWE.
Absolutely. And in your professional opinion, because again, you work with every major organization in the world. So compared now with everything on the confines of a publicly traded company, even the UFC and Bellator, etc., to back then with Pancrase and all these promotions, everything like that, what do you say is the fundamental differences between now with the major organizations and then with Pancrase and fighting in the UFC, etc., and pro wrestling as well?
Oh, well, I mean, there's been massive paradigm shifts in the way that this is seen as a sport, also the way it's promoted, and even the landscape of the games within the arenas. So mixed martial arts on the UFC level is kind of its own animal, and it seems to be the most widely understood variation thereof. And back in 1993 until I think it was 99 that Pancrase changed over from doing the open hand style with rope escapes and all that, which was a much more sporting type MMA event. Then they made it with MMA gloves, excuse me, and brought it into a more typical MMA atmosphere. And just now with the way professional wrestling is and with MMA, obviously you have all the streaming options, pay-per-views, the way that they market. So everything is always going to have adaptation. It's always going to go through some sort of evolution. I mean, you can argue whether or not it's a change in a better direction or worse or just different. Time will tell. But with wrestling, especially, there's been a massive shift from, well, obviously no more regional shows so much. They don't have territories anymore. But also the way people approach wrestling and how they get into it. There isn't the systems in place that there used to be, the gatekeeping. And now you have indie wrestling, which can be anything from a really tightly run, professional looking type show to something that looks just like some crazy outlaw mud show. So, and everything in between. So right. The internet has really opened up the ability for pretty much anything to have a platform. It's going to take time for, I think, things to even settle out a little bit. If there's any concern about what the market is made up of versus maybe what's going to last the test of time. But in some ways, this has been a boon because anybody with a good idea has an opportunity to put something out there to be seen. Just like what we're doing with GCW and myself doing Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, bringing shoot style professional wrestling with no gimmicks, Wrestling, no BS, no storylines, just real stories in the ring.
How was working with John Moxley, by the way?
Well, we have yet to actually face each other in the ring. Unfortunately, the first time it was he had a nasty staph infection in his elbow.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
well, there's everybody's loud vehicle is going by right now. And this most recent time where we were going to run our third show, and obviously pandemics. So you can thank whoever ate that bat as to why we still haven't had a proper match between me and Moxley. But he's a great professional and a hell of a wrestler, man. He's a champion in AEW for a good reason, and he is a man that I have a date with somewhere down the line.
Excellent. And I have plenty of memories of some of your greatest performances, like when you fought Nogueira, when you fought Hideyoko Yoshida, Mark Hunt when you submitted him, when you beat Rey Couture, Yuki Kondo, and when you beat Yuki Kondo, I saw a suplex. It was fucking crazy. Like, it blew my mind. But looking back in your career, pro wrestling and MMA, for both sports, because you competed in both, what would you say is the best memory or the best match or best opponent from both pro wrestling and MMA?
Wrestling Minoru Suzuki was an incredible opportunity for myself, and I loved every minute of it. It was great to say that two, grandchildren of Carl Gotch, one of them being a grandchild of Billy Robinson, myself, and people derived from that snake pit catch-as-catch-can style, being there on that same night and bringing their lineages together. That was pretty impressive. That was a real stellar moment in my career.
Awesome. And with mixed martial arts, your last fight was 2016. Pro wrestling, you're still going strong with your promotion. Do you plan on going back to mixed martial arts, or do you plan on sticking with pro wrestling?
I still have the ability to get punched in the head, so why not?
And you're great at both, so you can do either or. I mean, you're talented at both. So with this Pancrase documentary, and I asked Bass Rutten this, what do you hope that people learn from this documentary and they take home with them, especially the new casual MMA fans that just jumped on the bandwagon?
I just hope that they see the legacy of this, the epic journey that it was for all those that came before me, myself, and those after, that this opportunity to witness this hero's journey from these burgeoning popular professional wrestlers in Japan, going and taking all their skills and putting them in a ring and showing that this is real, this is legitimate, and creating this legacy that would be modern mixed martial arts and being a part of that. And also just because you watched it on TV today doesn't mean that it started today. There's a lot to be seen, and what we have with Pancrase is a pretty substantial part of that entire MMA myth, entire MMA legacy. But there's even folks before us with the UWF and UWFI and all the way back to New Japan, starting that first dojo in 1972. So I really hope that the history of all of this and these moments that people have created will be able to live on that much longer.
So, and you did UWFI. That was with Hideyoko Nobuhiko Takada, correct?
Yeah, Takada, and especially the earliest portion of it. Well, for me, it's the culmination of the, what do they call it? The World Heavyweight Tournament in 1992, I think it was, or maybe it was, no, I think it might have been 1994. No, maybe it was 92. Either way, it is probably some of the greatest professional wrestling I've ever seen, and maybe the greatest professional wrestling series of events that I can think of. And Takada, and the person responsible for putting all that booking together is Yuko Miyato, who's still out in Japan teaching catch as catch can. So
awesome. And just hearing from you guys and hearing from Bas Rutten, yourself, Guy Messner, all these legends of the sport. Obviously, I grew up watching you guys, so a little bit overwhelmed because I grew up watching you guys. But thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast, talk about it. Do you have any last words or anything that you can pass down to the newer fighters, or any advice that you can pass down? I look forward to you.
Well, to newer fighters, don't do it for money, but definitely don't do it for free. And
That's real
usually your head is for thinking, not for getting hit. But I've got a young team of killer fighters that are doing great. We're called the UWF USA. I just launched a brand new website, joshburnett.com. My whiskey business has been going quite well with Sesame Creek Distillery and Warbringer Bourbon. So, take a look at all I'm doing. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Josh L. Barnett. See what's up.
You're the man, Josh. Thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate you and the legends coming on, and I can't wait for the Netflix documentary about Pancrase.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one. And that was Josh Barnett. We'll wrap up the show.
Yep, I think that about does it for us.
Yes, sir.
So you want to do you want to talk about anything about any of the people coming on next week, or?
Yeah. So we talked about the generation that built up the sport, like all the veterans of the sport and everybody that helped build up the sport. But now we talk to the fighters that actually are going to be competing. And, it's so intriguing to talk to these fighters and get into their heads. And we know about the pioneers, obviously, and they laid the groundwork. And now we talk to the newer generation. We talk to the gentlemen and guys and gals that will be fighting on UFC and in the UFC, and, see where their head's at, see where they're going, see what their goals are. And I can't wait to speak to them, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, I think that about does it for us. Our next show will be, Thursday, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's 8:30 p.m. And we're going to have on fighter, I hope I pronounced that right, Kama Worthy and Andre Elwell. They are UFC fighters. And then we have the Titan FC fighter, John Birdsong. So we look forward to seeing you all next week.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Hi, I'm Matt Seibel, producer of the Fight Mixer Show. We have a good lineup of guests coming up next week. Take a look for yourself.
What's going on, fight fans? This is El Bandito of Leon Brito, getting some work done out here on the field. Check out my interview with Fight Mixer on the 23rd. We're going to be talking about my upcoming BKFC fight on the 26th. It's coming up real soon, guys. I will see you there.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy Eric Anders, and I can't wait to join all you fight fans on the Fight Mixer podcast.